Hello and welcome. Welcome. We are at the AIXLab at the Drake Hotel, fabulous Drake Hotel, on a sunny Chicago day. I have to my left, we're going to have a conversation with Ushma Kriplani from Argonne National Laboratory and Connor Prochaska from the Department of Energy Office of Technology Transitions. So let's just jump right into it. Ushma, you have the microphone. Why don't you go ahead with an introduction for yourself?
Thank you, Justin. I'm Ushma Kriplani. I'm the Associate Laboratory Director for Spire Partnerships and Outreach at Argonne National Lab. I'm in charge of making sure that all of the R&D work that the Department of Energy funds at Argonne makes an impact for the US taxpayer. We do this with working with industry, but we also do it with working with agencies outside the Department of Energy.
Good morning, afternoon. I'm Connor Prochaska. I'm the Chief Commercialization Officer for the Department of Energy, and I work hard in three areas: policy, making sure we have smart policies for our tech transitions and tech commercialization efforts; access, making sure people can get to that great technology. We spend roughly $18 billion a year on research and development at the Department of Energy, and how do we access that as far as the public's concerned? And then finally, promotion, getting less people to say, I didn't know the Department of Energy did that. But really at the core of it, it's helping Ushma do her job better as well as she does. She does a great job, but making sure that she's got the tools, resources, and ability to go out and, as she said, make the most impactful action that she can and most impact for the research that we do at the Department of Energy.
So did you want to keep that? Because we're going to start up for the next question. So you brought the word commercialization. If you can expand upon that, what that actually means from, I would say, from your perspective.
Sure. You know, at the department, we do some very basic research. That's where the Department of Energy comes into play here, is basic science and basic research. What do we do to make sure that we are maximizing the impact? And that does sometimes mean commercialization, but that kind of puts it in a niche. But we talk about impact a lot because that technology may turn out to be a lot of different things where it improves the lives of Americans and the world. And so what we want to do is make sure that companies know about our research, that if there are good ideas and good technologies, that they go out and can become potentially products, potentially companies, and benefit the U.S. taxpayer. Sometimes it's an experiment that results in a paper, and that's fine too, because it increases the body of knowledge that then in turn expands what we can do as a country and keeps us at the forefront of research, technology, and development, and keeps America at the forefront of that.
And for Ushma, you're from a national lab, obviously Argonne National Laboratory. What is your take on commercialization writ large?
So I'll segue from what Connor said really very well. The national labs do an awful lot of work from the very basic end to the very applied end. And what is today's really basic science, a generation out, that's the application of the future. If you look at all the science that goes into the space station, a lot of that was basic research 30 years ago. And so as we think about our science portfolio, it's how do we make an impact across that spectrum? And that typically means doing it in different ways depending on the technology you're looking at. So, you know, we have at Argonne, we have the advanced photon source. It's one of the brightest X-ray sources in the world. In a few years out, it will be the brightest X-ray source in the world. Now it's the second, I think. And this X-ray source, can be used to do an enormous amount of science and technology. It can do some really basic stuff, but recently we had a group from the Advanced Lead-Acid Battery Consortium come and talk to us about using the APS to understand why lead-acid batteries don't work as well as they should. Why do we care about lead-acid batteries? Aren't they yesterday's technology? Well, it turns out that if you can make lead-acid batteries last twice as long, you can actually use them on the grid. And they can provide robustness and resiliency to the electric power grid in a fashion that no other batteries can do for that price right now. So we can use the APS to look inside a lead-acid battery and see what's happening as the lead dissolves and redeposits on the surfaces inside. And fixing that process, understanding it and then fixing it, can extend the life of lead-acid batteries by a factor of 2. This has had a huge impact for that consortium, and we're very, very pleased with it. We've been able to help them rescue their business model from obsolescence and show them a whole new world of utilizing this on the grid, which also, of course, affects the utility industry very, very positively. So for us, commercialization is figuring out what the technology is, what the science is in some cases, who might utilize it, and then trying to make that match with them. So it's very much tailor the mechanism, tailor the way you do things to the need, to the client, and to the state of maturation of the technology in-house.
That sounds very strategic. So it's not just, I mean, I just want to get people to put the idea out there. It's not just scientists thinking up stuff just for the sake of thinking about it. But when you talk about commercialization, there's very definite purposes for the creation of these technologies. For the use of these technologies.
And I'd also, Ushma hit on something there. When we talk about brightest, we talk about fastest, we talk about best. We're not just, blowing smoke here. It's real. The United States National Laboratories, Department of Energy National Laboratory System, 17 national labs, have the fastest computers, have the brightest light source, have the most advanced proton sources. These are things that the United States government has put forth to build out on our knowledge base and to keep us in the forefront. But we lose that sometimes in today's society when people talk about this is the best and that's the best. No, we're not talking about some good technology. We're not talking about some pretty darn smart people. We're talking about the best technology in the world, the greatest researchers in the world reside in our U.S. national labs, and we want to make sure we maximize that.
I mean, that's an excellent point, because I think the point can't be reiterated enough. We have facilities that no other types of organizations have.
In the world.
Right.
Full stop.
Right. And I think we're gonna get to my next question is about successes, but I think that's what makes us such a success, the fact that we have facilities like the Advanced Photon Source and others that industry and universities come to us because they do need these facilities to do their research,
right,
to do science at scale, to do groundbreaking research. So Ushma, you touched on one of those successes with lead-acid batteries before, but I was wondering from a national labs perspective, any other success stories insofar as commercialization?
I'm really spoiled for choice, so I'm going to go with the theme that we raised up and then Connor mentioned again, our one-of-a-kind facilities. Another one of those one-of-a-kind facilities, except that it's one of very, very few, all in the national labs, is our high-performance computing setup. So the current generation of machine is called Mira, and using Mira, we ran a model of how to look at the physics of the climate in the United States. And it turned out that AT&T came to us because they've been having approximately $750 million worth of losses over a few years because of their facilities that are in Georgia's, in Florida, getting flooded out in extreme climate, in extreme weather situations. And they said, how do we think about protecting our facilities? Can you help us with that? We don't know where the extreme rainstorm is going to happen, and we don't know what the losses are going to look like when it does happen. So how do we help them with that? Well, we managed to do some really high-resolution analyses for them that showed them which of their facilities was under threat, and they could then take some steps to mitigate the losses that they would have if those facilities were flooded out. They were so excited by this that they now want us to try and do this for the entire United States, not just the Gulf Coast. But from our point of view, so this goes back to our basic research mission as well, from our point of view, we did a whole lot of groundbreaking statistics research to come to those results for AT&T. And that's the kind of thing that we will publish, and that will drive other scientists to be able to do that sort of work as well. So for us, commercialization, to use that word, in a very broad scope, is not just taking some stuff we do and giving it to industry. Okay. It's really using our interactions with industry and with other federal agencies as well to make our science smarter, to be exposed to problems that we wouldn't be exposed to if we didn't have those interactions. So it really is an essential tool of how we drive the frontier of science. Okay. It's not just, do it because you should, it's because it's our lifeblood for the future. And that's how, writ large, that's how Argonne and I believe the other national labs think about commercialization.
That's an excellent point, the AT&T Argonne collaboration, because I forgot how long it was. Was it like 30 years out in the future that they had projections?
Yeah.
So you're talking about, an industrial company, AT&T is huge, right? But they're also thinking about, okay, well, how secure, how resilient is our infrastructure in the next 30 years? And they can come to a national lab with the resources to be able to do those things and be able to find their answers. Now AT&T has the tools they need to be able to take the steps that they need to take. So we're going to move right on, and I know Connor.
Can I? Yeah, sure. I've said a couple of times that we do this with other federal agencies. That industry is not the only place
Right,
outside the Department of Energy where we make an impact. So this kind of work that we talked about with AT&T, we've also done it with the Department of Homeland Security in terms of hurricane response. We've been doing this for many years. When Puerto Rico went through the hurricanes that it went through, Argonne was leading the effort from the National Lab side to understand which parts would be most affected and then how to help them mitigate the effect on the citizens that were going to be most affected. We were called into the process early. We were providing, 30-minute by 30-minute updates on what the situation was looking like and how to help people be rescued, how to return power to them. So it's work that's vitally important to the individual. It's also vitally important to our companies. And at its root is the basic science mission that drives us. So
We're open for business.
There you go.
We're open for business. So, no, Connor, I know you're interested in the next question, and this flows perfectly from the conversation we just had insofar as successes, but nothing's perfect, right? So how do we become more intentional with our actions with industry or other federal agencies to make bigger and more intentional impacts, because the public is essentially footing the bill.
Right, and we want to make our interaction with private industry, with the public, more intentional, more, as you said, more purposeful, less accidental. We have no illusion. At the end of the day, we are the federal government. Nobody's ever said, "Gosh darn, it is so easy to work with the government," but we're working hard to make it easier to work with us, to make sure that those avenues, for a long time our research thought process was, hey, let's just shoot this out and hope somebody catches it. We can do better than that. We can make sure that people are highlighting. We do it through 3 different areas at the Office of Technology Transitions, and as my role in the Chief Commercialization Officer, we do it through policy. There's memos that have been floating around internally to the Department of Energy or other agencies that just don't make any sense anymore. Who's looking at that and evaluating and saying that should probably change? The world's different now than it was decades ago. That's one. Policy, the access. We use our labpartnering.org. If you haven't been on it, get on it, check it out. It's got almost 40,000 patents on there. It's got hundreds of researchers. It's got hundreds of facilities that you can go search and use and utilize. Labpartnering.org. Access, and then thirdly, promotion, which is exactly what we're doing here in Chicago here, talking about artificial intelligence, making sure that people know what the Department of Energy does, what we're doing beyond just the traditional thought process. We are leading in computers. We are leading in materials science. We are the closest thing the U.S. government has to a Department of Science. I report to the Undersecretary of Science. We are leading the charge, and we want to make sure that people can utilize that, because that's what maximizes the impact of the U.S. research and development taxpayer dollar. So
Perfect. And so time is running short. So I do want to bring it back to the fact that we are here in sunny downtown Chicago. Actually, it's not sunny; it's kind of raining outside, but it's fine.
I thought that when you said it.
But we're here at the InnovationXLab, and this happens to be the AI part of the series, and it's the fourth part of the series. So I want to ask you, from both your perspectives, what do you think about the conversations that you've been having with people that do work in industry, work in national labs? I'm assuming that some of these people, I would say industry in particular, didn't know the facilities that were available to them. So what are you finding from your conversations?
So I'm going to actually start where Connor left off. OTT, the Office of Tech Transitions, and the 3 missions that he outlined are going to... AIXLab is an example of how that office is helping drive the mission of my group and people like me across the National Lab Complex to much more successful outcomes. We've always tried to do the best we can with working with industry, with working with other federal agencies, and I think we do a very good job. What OTT brings is an overall policy structure and many ways to look at breaking the bottlenecks that help us do more. So that's very encouraging. The X Labs are one example of promoting awareness and encouraging partnerships at the highest level of DOE. This particular one is the 4th one. It's on artificial intelligence. Argonne is pleased and proud to be able to host it for the DOE and to have all of our sister labs here as well. The conversations with industry have been really encouraging. There's a hunger for more information on what we can do. And I've seen that not just for the Argonne people, but across the board. I'm hearing that from my colleagues at the other labs.
One more thing, labpartnering.org.
There you go.
Absolutely. Labpartnering.org is an excellent resource for information on all of the capabilities of the labs across the lab complex. So all 17 labs participate in labpartnering.org. It's LPS is another word that you might hear us use sometimes. So coming back to the AI X Lab, the conversations we are having are going to lead to interactions with our industry partners that are going to be substantially more focused on what we, the national labs, can do for them. So what can we do for them? Broadly speaking, that's laid out in the AI X Lab agenda, if you like. We've got parallel tracks on healthcare, on manufacturing, on energy, and on transportation. And we have picked 4 of these areas. There are probably 2 or 3 more that we didn't have time to put into the agenda. But these are the areas where our deep science and technology experience is going to be able to help industry, along with the data sets that we bring, that they would have no other means of accessing. So I hope that that kind of answers your question, Justin.
No, I mean, this is exactly what we talk about when we talk about making sure people are aware and building the conversations and talking about why, how, when, where, and what people can do with the Department of Energy. And Ushma summed it up great, but we're very happy to be here with Argonne. Argonne has been a great host for this 4th iteration of our X-Lab as part of our series as we go forward. And can't tell you how great the team's been to work with and what a jewel Argonne National Laboratory is.
Thank you so much. You can hang on to that. Time is gone. Thank you for joining us. Thank you again for Ushma Kriplani from Argonne National Laboratory, Connor Prochaska from the Department of Energy's Office of Technology Transitions Office. I'm Justin Bro, Argonne National Laboratory. Thank you for joining us. Remember, labpartnering.org if you're from industry, or if you're National Lab, never heard of it, go ahead, check it out, see what it's about. And we thank you for joining us today. Take care.